Baldur's Gate 3 is a game that I am no stranger to, having completed it well over a dozen times myself. But despite this, I somehow have never actually 100%ed the game. So instead of just caving in and 100%ing it, it got me wondering, what would happen if I tried to do the opposite? What if, instead of going achievement hunting, we tried avoiding as many as possible, making each and every single one into a restriction of some kind? Just how few achievements could we keep it to, and would it actually be possible to beat Baldur's Gate 3 without getting a single one? Well, there's only one way to find out. Right away, as soon as we select a new game, we run into our first important decision. Normally, I would simply hit honor mode and continue, but here that is not really an option. After all, there exist achievements both for beating the game in honor and tactician mode. So for the first time, well, ever, I have to actually play this game on either balanced or explorer. Never thought a challenge run would make it easier for me, but alright, here we are. On the character select screen, we also get a few more important choices. The Dark Urge is right away out of the question, as it has several achievements tied to it, and so is picking something like Monk, as, well, there exists an achievement for killing anything with an unarmed attack.
Let's go with Rogue, because they kinda just suck.
Now in game, things would only get worse. There are so many just small, inconvenient achievements that we can accidentally get. Super normal things like just shoving people off a cliff or simply attacking a total of 5 times in a turn is just not allowed. We can't dig for treasure, can't read someone's mind, can't create potions. You got jailed? Well, too bad. Go restart the entire game, because you're not allowed to leave. And even something like long resting, you know, how you progress the story and get back all your resources, is just not allowed. Anyway, finally starting the game now, I quickly make my way over to the helm, and here we run into our first real missable achievement, defeating Zalk. Thankfully, even on the easiest difficulty, he has more than 100 HP, meaning that as long as I don't interfere, the Mind Flayer won't have enough time to actually murder him before we make it off the ship. But as soon as we interact with the transponder, we run into the first real problem of this run. Scene transition achievements.
Shit, man, I failed already? Really? Let me come up with some dumb excuse. These don't count because they're not achievements. You have to do it in order to progress, and an achievement is something that is earned.
Who am I kidding? Yes, we are going to have to get some achievements this run, sadly. I mean, is that really a shock to anyone? I really did try here, but as far as I can find, you can't glitch your way off the nautiloid. In order for the game to even load Act 1, you have to specifically click the transponder, and as soon as you do, you get this first unavoidable achievement. So I guess with just a few minutes played, it's time to find out just how few achievements we can keep this to. Anyway, now down on the beach, we get the option of recruiting a few companions. But almost every single one of them actually have at least one achievement tied to them. So, naturally, to not have to worry about any of these, it is time to simply leave them all to rot and continue onwards solo. You didn't actually think I would use companions, did you? Anyway, I quickly make my way past the grove and run into our first parasite. Sadly though, they will be completely banned this entire run, as there's an achievement tied to getting our first illithid power. The Blighted Village is another part that we mostly can't interact with either. Not only does Shovel, the probably strongest thing you can get here, have an achievement tied to her, but so does the Spider Matriarch, meaning that I'm not even allowed to do the boss either. So, without actually almost anything we can do in Act 1, it is time to simply move on to the mountain pass, where we here actually get forced into taking a long rest. Thankfully, the long rest achievement requires us to rest 4 times, but this is not the only time the game will do this, meaning that one of the 4 times we're allowed to long rest is now forcefully used on us just exploring. Here we also run into withers, which you might think solves our no companion issue, but no, there's an achievement tied to recruiting any hireling.
Why is she just standing there?
Of course, we can't actually go into the creche and grab the blood of Lathander either, nor can we go and say how to Vlaakith in order to help Voss. They both got achievements locked to them after all. So again, just leaving and heading straight into Act 2 it is, where we straight away get our second fun transition achievement. Mid-loading screen this time. So, currently I have just woken up and then walked straight over to Act 2. I was really not meant to be here and so figured that some actual XP really couldn't hurt.
What are you doing, Lisa?
The easiest way of doing this, normally, is to simply run around to the different Thorms and kindly tell them to, well, off themselves. And while Malus technically has an achievement tied to him, it requires specifically being in combat, so just talking him to death works fine. The only exception to this is specifically Geringoth, as for some reason her achievement does not actually require combat, and so if you convince her to not fight you, well, you kinda just get it. I did still really badly need his XP though, so it is time to actually take on this fight, which quite obviously has a big problem. You see, for us to not get the achievement, Geringoth needs to specifically use her gold attack against us. Then yes, I'm talking about the one that usually just explodes one character every fight. It deals damage based on how much gold you're carrying, so I figured if I just go into this with like 1 gold in my pocket, I can easily just tank it and then proceed to annihilate her. But as it turns out, if you have too little gold, she simply just won't use it. So I had to have enough gold for her to use it, but then she would just one-shot me. Thankfully though, there is a way to tank this hit, kind of at least, as Sorcerer's new subclass, Shadow Magic, comes with the exact same passives that Half-Orc get, reviving them upon getting brought down to 0 HP one time. And well, with that and a little bit of luck, it was still possible to survive one of these stupidly powerful gold moves.
Nice move. My turn.
And so, with some actual levels now, it was time to head into Moonrise. Here, we are not allowed to save the prisoners in the basement, as that is yet another achievement, but strangely enough, that is actually the only achievement that is tied to Moonrise. And what is even stranger is that the Gauntlet of Shar actually has even less. There is not a single achievement tied to it at all here. So we are free to just do whatever we like, as if it was a completely normal playthrough.
Shh, no one tell him.
And so, after quickly freeing the Night Song, it is time to head over to Moonrise and Ketheric. At this point, I had kinda ran out of dumb ways to kill Ketheric in, but I accidentally discovered something which is kinda really funny. You see, the Night Song here is immortal. This means that after combat is started here on the roof, it will just never end, even if we decide to just leave. Ketheric and his Necromites will just keep killing the Night Song, who will keep getting up forever. And normally this will be a stalemate, but as it turns out, Ketheric can be really dumb sometimes. Each turn, he is programmed to at least attempt to summon a Necromite egg thing. This egg always attempts to target an enemy, but if there's no enemy in the fight, he will actually just summon the egg at his own feet. And well, seeing as the egg will, after a turn, explode, he will just, if we give him enough time, slowly but surely end himself without us needing to do anything. So without me having to lift a finger, we can now just head down into the Mind Flayer colony, where things would not be as easy. Merkel is still annoying, and he is still hard. And with me having barely any levels and being so low, it's time to bring out a really funny strategy involving this little restoration thing here. Using it makes us effectively take a long rest, and on the higher difficulties you can only use this once, but on the lower ones, which remember we are forced to be on, you can spam this indefinitely. And as I'm sure you can imagine, being able to spam infinite long rests without actually taking one can lead to some, well, pretty funny interactions. And the one we're showcasing today revolves around Spore Druid. At level 6, they get 4 fungal infestation charges, letting them, by targeting corpses, raise up to 4 zombies. These 4 charges are normally only restored after taking a long rest, and upon doing so, despawns any summon. But you know what does not despawn them? That's right, this restoration pod. And since you can, for some reason, use 1 corpse to raise any amount of zombies, this can quickly get out of hand.
Look at all of these. It's so stupid. We are ready for war. Ketheric Thorm thinks that he can beat us. Look at this bar. Look at the bar. All right, we're going down, guys. Everyone on the elevator. Yep. There we go. Come on. Everyone on. Yep. Eric. The fuck is going on? We're going. You stand no chance, Ketheric.
I had so many zombies that upon entering the arena, the game actually delayed the cutscene long enough for me to not only see Orin and Gortash just standing there, but even walk all the way over to them. Yep, everything is clearly working as intended. Sadly, even though I have over 100 zombies, I couldn't actually just spam attack Ketheric, as we still need to be careful to not get the 5 attacks in a turn achievement. But still, with Ketheric only having 2 attacks each turn and no real AoE damage, I could still fairly quickly bring him down. But Merkel would not be so simple. With his extremely big AoE attacks, he was obliterating like 20 zombies at a time, which would have been a real problem if I didn't have so many that he wasn't even making a dent in the total. And so slowly, anytime a turn passed, I could hit him 4 times and then simply run in with new zombies to replace the old ones. Eventually, Merkel drops to around 60% health and thus triggers Merkel's Call. Here we actually have to be careful, as he does have an achievement tied to him, awarded to us if we manage to beat him without letting him absorb any necromites. Normally, stopping him from doing this isn't actually that easy, as you either need to just burst him or constantly keep the necromites off him. But here, they can't even make it to him without dying to opportunity attacks from our hundreds of zombies, that is. Which meant that in order to even do this, I had to purposely make sure that a safe route for our necromite friend here was available. Eventually though, it did make it there. Merkel had its snack and I could then slowly but surely finish him off with a still insane amount of zombies remaining. First Netherstone acquired. That wasn't too bad. We just gotta outrun this zombie horde now and leave for Act 2. Before leaving though, we as per usual have the fun Gith encounter to deal with, which means another forced long rest, putting us up to 2 out of 4. I could simply ignore the first ones, but down at the Emperor, things would just get more annoying. The easiest way of beating these guys normally is just to shove them down cliffs, but well, due to there being an achievement for that, we cannot actually do so. Or at least we shouldn't have been able to, but as it turns out, the shove achievement is a bit weird. If you throw someone off a cliff here in the astral plane, they don't actually die from either a chasm or fall damage, but instead just land on an invisible floor below, where they then, well, die. This meant that even though we threw them off a cliff, since the source of death is not actually falling, we don't get the achievement, and so this strategy is still entirely viable. And so after passing yet another parasite, we are forced into yet another long rest, putting us up to 3 out of 4. Oh yeah, we also reach Act 3, where we once again get another unskippable Act Transition achievement, putting the required amount of achievements up to 3, which is just fantastic. Act 3 itself does contain its own slew of achievements, involving things like knocking down Answer mid-flight, but as long as we just beeline for the Netherstone holders, we shouldn't really need to worry. The first of which is Gortash. The easiest way of killing this man is to simply use the usual kidnapping plus shoving him into the abyss trick, but as it turns out, this would not work, because of course there's an achievement tied to fighting him, awarded for beating Gortash without activating any traps. This is meant to be very hard to get, as normally if you just accidentally even walk into the vicinity of a trap, they will trigger, but with how easy it is to cheese this fight, it turns out to be way more difficult not to get. I could, of course, simply try to walk in and do the fight normally, but considering the fact that I was only level 7 and he had, well, an entire army on his side, even though I am playing on the literal easiest difficulty, I just had no hope of surviving. Which means it was time to get at least a bit creative. If we move Gortash away from his friends and then start combat with him, no matter the distance, some of them will still always join combat. This would keep us safe, but still does not solve the issue of the traps. Solving this is thankfully easy enough, as by simply leaving any summon in the building, they can then, after we start the encounter, trigger a trap for us, which strangely enough decides to stay in the fight even after they disappear. Trap triggered, job well done. second netherstone acquired. And so all that remains now is getting over to Orin. I could easily learn the code to enter the murder tribunal by simply ambushing Dollar and murdering him before he had any hope of escaping, but getting the amulet of Baal would be slightly trickier. What you can normally do here is simply show Saravok any hand, like the one we have collected from Gortash, in order to become an assassin of Baal and get the amulet for free. However, just like so many other things in this run, becoming a Baal cultist would not be a solution, as there's actually an achievement tied to doing this, leaving us with just one solution.
Interloper. He just dies. Bombs were a mistake.
Orin is the only one that remains now and is yet another boss which has another anti-cheese achievement tied to her. This time simply rewarded to us if we for any reason beat her while the ritual is ongoing. This should mean that doing the normal cheese where we walk up and throw her off a cliff is out of the question, right?
Wait, what? It worked?
No, not right, wrong. Not only is this another weird kill zone, but it also just does not reward us with her special one for instantly winning. Why? I don't know. Probably because the fight never even has a chance to start, which means the ritual can't even begin in the first place. I was fully expecting this to just give me the achievement and was just doing it to showcase that it wouldn't work, but it makes my job a whole lot easier, so I guess I'm not complaining. And so with the last netherstone collected, all that remains is heading over to the Morphic pool, where again, unfortunately, due to us not being allowed to get a single illithid power, becoming a mind flayer is completely out of the question, meaning that we are forced to hand over the netherstones to the Emperor. And after Withers reminds me of the fact that I have made 0 friends this run, we can, with the usual Invis potions, skip right over to the final battle. This one does technically contain an achievement for killing the Red Dragon, but I didn't really have any plans of doing that anyway. And in fact, I don't plan on fighting anyone here, as by making the Emperor invisible with greater invisibility and then going invisible myself, I can simply just stroll over to the crown and open the portal without anyone being able to even attempt to target me. And so we have reached the Netherbrain, who apparently on Explorer only has 200 HP, which means that the fight itself is really easy, but it's not that I'm worried about. It's what comes after. See, after beating this final encounter where most challenge runs would already be over, we are not done. No. Here we're presented with 3 options, each one leading to a different ending. And unfortunately, this choice is very rough, as no matter if we decide to be evil or merciful, as soon as the credits roll, we are always awarded with 2 achievements. One for the specific ending we chose, and one for just beating the game. Meaning yet another 2 forced achievements, putting the grand total of necessary achievements up to 5. Still way better than what I expected though, especially since each and every necessary one comes from different unskippable scene transitions. Thanks for watching as always, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.